Hey everyone, welcome back to In Her Wallet podcast, a weekly show helping women around the world take control of their finances for good and build better financial futures one episode at a time. My name is Sofiia. I'm the host and creator of In Her Wallet podcast and an accredited investment representative here in Canada. You are in for a treat today because we're talking about the power of personal brand and how it can help you grow and accelerate your career. I have an amazing guest speaker joining us today. Her name is Olessia Lapina. She's a career consultant with over 10 years of experience working for amazing brands we all know and have heard about: LVMH, Tiffany Company, Fairmont Hotels, and so many more. She has managed teams, so she's going to be sharing the knowledge and experience she's gone through herself. Some of the things you can expect from today's episode is how to harness the power of personal brand to change different companies or change roles, how to use your network to advance in your career, how to grow that network, and also how to establish a personal brand if you're just starting out. Before we dive into today's episode, there is one thing I want to ask you as always. If there is any value you take away from In Her Wallet podcast at all, I would so appreciate if you took the time to leave us a 5-star rating if you feel like we've deserved it and a written review. You can do that on Spotify or Apple Podcasts app. On Apple Podcasts app, you simply scroll all the way down on the In Her Wallet podcast page. There is a write a review section. Your review can be short or long. It can be anything from the guest speakers you want to see to the topics you want me to talk about to perhaps any feedback on today's episode. All of this helps me show up as a better host for you and helps our show grow. Well, with that, let's welcome Olessia to In Her Wallet podcast. Olessia, I'm so excited to have you on. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to have this conversation, and thanks a lot for inviting me in.
Of course. Well, I think today is very exciting because there are two reasons, and I haven't told you about that. First of all, today is episode number 60 of the In Her Wallet podcast, 60, so very beautiful number of our episode. And second of all, you're actually the last guest speaker to join In Her Wallet podcast in season 2 before we wrap it up. So I'm very excited for this conversation.
I'm honored and congratulations. That's amazing. 60 episodes is a lot. That's a lot of hard work.
Yeah, I can't believe we've been so consistent this year and literally releasing a new episode every single week. I'm excited for that, but I'm also excited to take a break.
I can imagine. It takes a lot of energy to get something like this out and come up with ideas for content too.
Exactly. Well, today we're going to be talking about the power of personal brand and how it can help grow your career. Before we dive into this conversation, let's do a short icebreaker so our community can get to know you better. Tell me, what's your go-to coffee order?
So I'm a big coffee fiend. I have like 4 a day. I'm a mom of a toddler. So I always generally have a latte or an Americano.
Nice. Do you have a movie that you can rewatch again and again?
Like every movie, as long as it's romantic and funny. But generally, Love Actually is a movie that I rewatch every single year for Christmas. It's definitely a favorite.
I'll add it to my list. And if you could go anywhere in the world right now, where would that be?
Easy, Italy. It's by far my favorite place to go. I've been almost everywhere in Italy, thankfully. I'm very grateful for that. But it's a place that I am ready to like move if somebody says, let's go tomorrow.
Love it. I would love to go to Italy as well. I agree with you. Alessia, can you tell us a bit more about yourself for those folks who have not heard of you? You obviously have a pretty large following on social media, but can you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my background is in human resources and talent acquisition. That's where I've spent the last 12 years of my life, building a career both on the recruitment end as well as the HR end. I've worked for companies like Tiffany Company, Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, and Accor Hotels that you might know for the Fairmont Hotels and Resorts brand. And I've worked in a number of functions there, essentially managing either the recruitment strategy for those companies or managing their HR function. And over a year ago now, I started my own consulting company. and I provide HR consulting support to businesses, as well as I work with directly with candidates looking for work through providing them with interview support, resume support, and offer negotiations.
Love it. And I mean, you've worked for a number of brands and companies we all know, we all probably use and see daily. So I feel like that would be a whole different conversation to have with you about experience of working for these companies. But I'm very excited to discuss the experience and knowledge that you bring to the table today from the perspective of personal brand. So to start off, can we define what a personal brand is in the workplace?
Yeah, absolutely. So to me, it's almost like your reputation, right? It's how you're perceived. What is the experience of you going to be like when somebody thinks about working with you, interacting with you? What is that perception that comes to mind? That is essentially your personal and professional brand when we're talking about the workplace or life in general.
Are there any key components that we can define in personal brand that can, when thinking about how to build it, what does it consist of?
For me, a large portion of personal brand is having a network and being known in that network for something. When I'm talking about something, it should definitely be an expertise, a skill, something that you're able to land a helping hand with, something that you are known for. And I think many people neglect networking. But for me, it's definitely, having a personal brand is almost impossible without that network and a way to contribute. I think it's also important to be passionate about what you do and what you want to do. And, again, just experience, knowledge, and level of expertise because you can sell yourself all day long. But if you walk into the job and you fall short of what you promised, that's going to negatively affect your personal and professional brand as well.
Let's say if we're talking from a perspective of someone who has never intentionally built a personal brand, but they want to get there, how can they leverage their strength to start building that?
So, for me, one of the most important things in life, and especially when it comes to building a personal or professional brand, is self awareness and feedback. So, one of the things that I recommend for people to do is to really understand what is the current perception of you. And whether that means, reaching out to your personal network, your colleagues, your manager, and having that discussion, even sending them like maybe a survey monkey anonymously, but getting that feedback, that honest feedback of how do people perceive you? What are you known for? What are the things that they think about when you come to mind? What do they think would be a perfect profession for you? What are your strengths? According to them, because sometimes we are not the best judge of our own skills and expertise and our strengths, and I think that exercise can really help. So I would definitely recommend starting with getting feedback and then reflecting on how do you want to be perceived. Where are those gaps then, right? Of how you're currently being perceived and where you want to be, and figuring out a game plan to get to where you want.
Olessia, in what ways does a strong personal brand help us succeed in our career?
I think it's a lot of things. I think a lot of people have been raised to believe that if we get a job, we work really hard, we stay those late nights, that a promotion, a raise, and career advancement is definitely going to happen. But that's just not the way it works in real life, right? It's a lot of it is about gaining allies, a lot of it is about growing a network, a lot of it is making strategic moves from one job to another, negotiating your offers. So there's so much that goes into it. And I think all of those things, whether you're building an internal or external network, whether you're looking for allies within the workplace, require you to have, again, that professional and personal brand. You need to look the part, speak the part, you need to be known for the part, and there needs to be a level of thought leadership that goes along with what you do.
So I think now that we have identified what a personal brand is and how it can help us streamline our careers, let's talk about the actual nitty gritty of building a brand. And I think you've mentioned quite a few times already something about LinkedIn and online presence. So, how important is it in today's day and age to have that online presence in building a personal brand?
I mean, for me, I think it's incredibly important, right? It's also a very easy way to get out there, and to be known for something. I mean, people are posting about all sorts of things. And I know that it's very hard, maybe sometimes, to find that comfort level to get started, especially with LinkedIn and reaching out and sharing your thoughts with your professional network. It can be very intimidating. But I think even something as easy as creating content, as in resharing an article that's pertinent to your business, or to your industry, and sharing your thoughts on it. It doesn't have to be anything insightful, but starting there and getting comfortable. Also, making it a point to reach out to people within your network, and see how you can land a helping hand to them. Is there anything that you can assist with? Can you grab a coffee with them and just find out what they're working on? I think being useful, and really coming forward and giving, rather than treating networking as this little dirty thing that we have to do to succeed, which sometimes I feel like that's how we perceive it, can make the process more enjoyable and comfortable as well. But, I think a lot of it is taking the time to do it and prioritizing it and starting small. You don't have to build a website for yourself tomorrow to have a professional brand. It could be sharing an article and having a few thoughts, and then slowly and slowly moving forward towards what you perceive you want it to be in the future.
When we talk about online presence, do we primarily talk about having that activity and engagement on LinkedIn? Or are there any other platforms that people can use? Or you mentioned a website potentially, even. So, what applies best from your perspective and experience?
I really think it depends on the level of comfort and time a person has. I think LinkedIn is very easy. We can use it for work. Our industry, our peers are already on there. So it's a very easy way to get started that's not going to take a lot of time and commitment. If somebody is in, a creative space, such as marketing or graphic design or architecture, as some things that come to mind, fashion design, they may want to expand into something like a blog or more content creating situation, to really showcase what they can do. So it really depends on what the ultimate goal, what the industry is, and what the person is looking to do, and how much time they have. But for me, I think LinkedIn is a safe and easy way to start.
Alessia, do you have any tips on how to maintain a professional and effective online presence?
I mean, firstly, I think a lot of people neglect the fact that, employers do look at your social media presence. You do have a social footprint, especially on LinkedIn. Everything you like, comment on, reshare on LinkedIn is easily visible just through your profile. And I think just sticking to things like not sharing, you know, opinions that are too personal, are based on religion, political views, and sticking to work and sharing your, again, thought leadership about your industry and your role, and having more focus on why you're posting, will definitely help. I think making your personal profiles private, if you're not looking to, again, use it as a part of your personal brand, because every single piece of you that's out there is a part of your personal and professional brand. And I think people forget about that. So you want to make sure that whatever somebody sees is going to really accentuate what you want them to think about you and the perception that they build around you, rather than take away from it.
talking from a perspective of someone who is just starting their career, or from a perspective of a person who is facing some challenges in their current position? How can they use their personal brand to navigate the situations?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I deal with a lot of people that are going through career transition or just starting out. And again, I think it's around being visible, right? It's about being involved outside of just your daily duties and responsibilities. I think the more people know you for something, the more people like you at work, the more people can raise their hand when the question gets asked, who should be promoted next or who should we give a raise to. And you want a following essentially around you, both internally and externally, that's going to support you in those situations. So thinking about how can you put yourself out there, who can you connect with, how is that going to help you as you move forward, especially if you're starting out or looking to just get a job, which a lot of people do, and I completely understand why. We also need to make sure that we say yes to the right opportunities, that are not going to deter us from the ultimate goal as well, and what we want to achieve in our careers.
I think we talked quite a bit about online presence and that external um, use of space to grow personal brand. But let's say you're someone who is already working in a company. How can you grow personal brand within a workplace during your presentations or by talking to your colleagues? How does that look like?
Again, I think it's, bringing a certain amount of knowledge and learning how to listen. I think people sometimes perceive, having a professional personal brand as being a strong communicator, which is true, but that doesn't mean just saying something to be heard and to be visible, right? It's about adding value. So again, I think it's a lot of it goes back to reflecting on what value can you add, where can you gain more allies and networks, whether that's through, ERGs within your company, whether that's through some sort of social committees, which I think are an amazing way to get to know people in other departments. But essentially, a lot of it also comes down to the product and quality of work that you're producing. So focusing on that, what do you want to be known for, especially if you're a new manager, as an example, or a leader. I think for that, especially, there's a lot to be said around having inspirational leadership in a company, which means, again, thought leadership, sharing your ideas and your mindset, making sure that you're setting the right example for culture. So again, I think it depends on what you'd want to be known for within your organization. So figuring that out and seeing how you can promote that within a company and selling yourself essentially, right? Not being afraid of sharing what you've done and how you've done it, and being able to speak to your achievements, which again, I think a lot of people feel uncomfortable with sometimes.
So, our episode is titled How the Power of Personal Brand to Grow Your Career. And I want to move into the second part of our conversation now on how to actually strategically use that personal brand that, let's say, right now you have already built. It's strong, it's visible, people feel it, and how to use it to negotiate stronger offers for yourself. So, my first question in that regard would be, how can individuals use their personal brand to strategically transition from one company to another?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the benefits I think of having a strong professional and personal brand is if you're known for something, companies are going to want to hire you. You're going to be a in demand candidate. I can think off the top of my head of, in the hotel space, a few professionals that I would always recommend. I think would be an amazing value add to any organization. I just think they're spectacular professionals. So, that's part of their professional brand, right? So once you're known for that, it's a lot easier for you to even get access to opportunities. When it comes to negotiating for your offer, again, the stronger the perception of, if we hire this person, our investment in giving them the $20,000 that they're asking for, or that bonus structure that they're asking for, most likely will pay for itself, because They have an amazing reputation. They come with a skill set. Look at, their work and everything they've posted on LinkedIn. And all of that, again, is visible and part of the perception that the company has of you. So the more the company that you've applied to thinks that you're going to bring, the easier or the more leverage you have to negotiate a better offer for yourself. And I think, changing jobs every 3 to 5 years, in my personal opinion, is an amazing way to not only advance in your career when it comes to titles and scope of work, but also in compensation. Negotiating an offer is just so important. You can go, I'm a great example of that. I started out making, $30,000 a year in the beginning of my career. And within 7 years, I was, in the six figures. So all of that came from changing jobs, negotiating, and making sure that I know how to present what I bring to the table.
I have two questions that came to my mind listening to you just now. First one is, and you're going to speak to it from a perspective of someone who's worked in HR, who's managed teams. So when you apply for a job, does the HR team actually go on LinkedIn or your website or your Instagram and check out who you are and what social media footprint you have?
So HR, no, because any professional HR person would tell you, that's, I would say there's like a lack of integrity to that sometimes from an HR perspective. But in my experience, have I seen hiring managers do that? Absolutely, 110%. Because the person that is going to be paying you a salary, that is going to be working with you for 9 hours a day, that may have potentially had a bad experience with a hire before, is going to want to find as much information on you as possible. So, absolutely, people do check your Facebook, your LinkedIn. And I mean, I have had that information brought to me in my role before. And, you have to maintain a level of neutrality, obviously, but you would be surprised at what's out there, and that people, that's easily searchable. So
So
I,
make your Instagram private if you're applying for a new job. Make your Facebook private. Use that social media space strategically.
exactly. And not necessarily, private. If there's things that you want to share, make sure that they are, again, adding to your personal brand, adding to your professional brand. If you walk into your workplace Monday morning, are you comfortable with every single person of like those 300 people in the office, seeing what you've been posting out there? So if there's, inappropriate images of you, if there's very charged, politically charged posts, like these are things that you have to consider, because again, information gets out there, information gets shared, and the last thing that you want is for that to tarnish your reputation.
100%. My second question was, you talked about, how you can strategically move companies to accelerate in your career every 3 to 5 years from perspective of a personal brand. What challenges can arise when carrying that personal brand into a new workplace, and how can that be navigated?
Very good question. I think, the difficulty with starting a new position is that essentially you do start over when you join a new team. So it can be seen as a challenge or an opportunity, right? I always like to look at things as an opportunity. So walking into a new team, you can really redefine how you're going to approach your new job. How do you start off on the right foot? What are the steps that you're going to take to be more visible, build more network within your new organization, and what are you going to be known for? And you essentially have a blank slate to do that before your team gets to know you. Um, that being said, bringing a wealth of experience and having examples that you can provide and experience that you can back up your opinions and your recommendations on, again, is part of that personal and professional brand that you bring with you everywhere. So again, going back to, that piece of knowledge and expertise is something that is a huge opportunity, especially if you're changing companies and you have a fresh perspective. Um, I think that's invaluable to any organization.
Let's say I'm someone who is currently working in the corporate world. I'm pretty successful, but I am considering a move to a new company. Maybe they approached me, maybe I want to approach them. Do you have any tips on how one can tailor or upgrade their personal brand to fit the requirements or the culture of the new company they're planning to move to?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a balance. You always want to be authentic. I believe in integrity in the process. I don't believe in just creating this image that the company wants, whether it's through your resume or through your LinkedIn profile. But I think a lot of that comes from understanding the space in which you want to work. What are the skills that are going to be important to them? Within their culture, what are some aspects of that space culture that's going to be important? Like tech is very different from legal in what they're going to value. And then really take a look at your LinkedIn page as an example and think, does that reflect the space in which I want to go? Does my headshot reflect that? Does my experience section reflect that? Does my network reflect that? If your network is primarily in tech, again as an example, but you want to work in interior design and that's your new career path, that's something to consider. So I think there just needs to be a lot of alignment, and as much alignment as you can find between yourself and the company or industry where you want to work, the more you're going to be appealing to those potential companies and recruiters that are reaching out and looking for the right person.
Hmm. That's good to know. And finally, let's talk about salaries, bonuses, negotiations. What are some of the specific ways to communicate the unique value you bring to the table when negotiating an offer or considering multiple offers from different companies and, explaining what value you bring?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things that I always recommend for people to do is have a running file of all of your achievements and projects. I just think it's incredibly important to have almost like a database of what you've done, how you've done it, and the impact that you've made on the bottom line of a company. This is all information that you can bring into a new role if you're negotiating your contract, and that they're working on a specific project. You can always say, I'm looking for a 10% increase because I anticipate through this and this, when I start my new role, I'm going to increase your revenue by 15%, right? So if you know what you're capable of, if you understand your value and you understand what you've done in the past, it's going to be a lot easier to have that conversation. The other side of it is understanding what your skill set is being paid in the market. So making sure that you have that background information on what the labor market is like and what essentially the market is paying for somebody like you is going to also be important in coming in armed with that information about the compensation packages.
Do you have any real life examples from the people that you work with? We should talk actually about your consulting agency and how you help people, but maybe real life examples from people you work with or from your personal experience when a personal brand helped negotiate for an offer that was higher than what's offered on the market or what was originally offered. I think it'll be very interesting to highlight some cases like that for our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I have an individual who was making a career change within the same industry, but doing different jobs. And this was quite recent, just about 6 months ago. Um, and he was a lot more junior than all of the other candidates for the position. And the company had actually done a lot of background digging on you know what is this person all about. And this comes back to building that network, building that professional brand. All of the feedback that they received was unbelievable. It was very positive about this individual. And they ended up, getting an offer, and a much higher offer that was initially anticipated, because they did have a competing offer on the table as well that they brought forward and let the company know. But they wanted this person because the feedback, the reputation essentially preceded this
The
individual. So
person.
absolutely. They were able to make a career change, a huge leap in title, and again, a great compensation package, all based on what they're known for and what people perceive their strengths to be. Um, so that's one example. I've worked with an individual that I hired for a company that I worked for that was new to Canada, and he had never worked um, in the Canadian market. But again, you know having that experience from abroad, having built a network here, sharing his knowledge and expertise on LinkedIn, this person started popping up for our entire team. And as he was going through the hiring process, initially, this individual was actually rejected, but kept in touch with our team, kept doing what he's doing. And eventually the perception was, you know what, this person would be great. So ended up being hired, to our team a year later, in a higher capacity than initially applied for. So I think it's, absolutely has a huge role to play in getting a new job, in getting that title and getting that raise. I think it's really, really important for career strategy overall.
One thing I want to ask you, I mean, obviously, these are fantastic cases. You mentioned when the company did some digging, they found out all these amazing things about the person, the candidate, and his reputation preceded himself. What kind of digging did they do? Is that looking through his LinkedIn? Is that contacting his previous employer? Can you give us some actual examples there so people can better understand and act on the things that we share?
Yeah. So in terms of, I would say it's almost like due diligence, right? At the end of the day, people do, within certain industries, like I know, for example, in retail, everybody knows each other, right? So a lot of times people will reach out and ask, like, do you know this person? Can you connect me with somebody that would be great for this job? You want to be the name that comes up. And that's what I mean by, like, when you come up as a topic, you want that information about you to be positive. LinkedIn is the same thing. Like, I know within, my LinkedIn newsfeed that I get every day, there are certain people that I go to their pages and I look forward to the content that they put out, because I feel that it's informative, it's interesting, and when an opportunity arises with a client or somewhere else, that person is going to be top of mind because they're always making sure that they're out there. So a part of it, again, I think, having that reputation, but also when companies are thinking, oh, we have, a director of sales opportunity, you know what, I've been seeing that person post about what they've done in sales over at Shopify over the last year. Let me reach out and see if they're interested. So this is truly how it happens. Like, there is, a lot of positions that are filled that way without even, posting a role sometimes on LinkedIn or Indeed.
Alessia, do you have any final tips before we jump to the last two questions that I ask every guest?
Yeah, I just think sometimes when we talk about personal or professional brand, again, people overcomplicate it. And I think it's this intimidating thing, especially if you may not be super confident or super outgoing. I don't think it has to be this larger than life project. And again, I think it's putting yourself out there slowly and maybe just starting with getting that feedback and understanding on what skills you need to develop, whether it's a communications course on Coursera to speak more confidently, or another degree, or building a network and going for coffee with someone. I really think it's focusing on those little steps along the way rather than, again, going back to, having this incredible following on LinkedIn or having a website or having a huge following on Instagram. It's not for everyone. And I don't think that is the defining picture of a personal and professional brand. I think it's more about focusing on your reputation, your expertise, your knowledge, and your network. And that will come together to form an amazing brand for anyone that's willing to take the steps.
Fantastic. Thank you for, I think, grounding us all down, because I feel like you can get overwhelmed easily when talking about personal brand. At least I do. So this was a perfect tip. Olessia, what is financial freedom to you?
Time, I would say definitely time. And I think it changes for people over time. And your values obviously evolve. But being a mom and, getting older, financial freedom is definitely having free time to spend with my family.
Perfect. And what do you think every woman should do to achieve financial freedom?
I think first defining what financial freedom means to them. For some, it means buying a house. For some, it means being able to travel. And then finding a roadmap to that using your skills and expertise. And obviously, reaching out for help. Like, I think it's incredible what you're doing with the podcast, what you're doing with, the services that you offer. And I think there's so much help available. And we have been conditioned to think that we can do it all on our own, but now there's so much support, whether it's paid or free, or there is a wealth of information out there. So I think just taking advantage of that, and figuring out, if something's not working, if you're spinning your wheels and not getting anywhere, reach out and get that support, and be a little bit more strategic, and get the help that you might need.
Thank you. I totally agree with you. Olessia, how can In Her Wallet community get in touch with you if they're interested to work with you to get your help?
The easiest way to do that is to follow me on Instagram through Olessia_Lapina. And feel free to DM me. I'm pretty quick at responding. And there's a wealth of information there, again, about, resume writing, interview preparation, offer negotiation. And I'm looking forward to launching some new services in the new year. So I would love to hear from anyone that's interested or needs any assistance in that space.
Olessia, thank you so much for being with us today. I think this was such a meaningful and valuable conversation. I'm sure that our community will love it.
Thank you so much, Sophia.
That was it. Thank you all for joining In Her Wallet podcast. As always, I want you to give yourself credit for showing up for yourself and your future, because every time you do that, you increase what's financially possible for you. If you found today's episode valuable and useful, please take time to leave us a 5-star rating and a review. It goes a long way. It helps me show up as a better host for you and helps our show grow. With that, I will see you next week.